Nice podcast.
What is up, everybody? Once again, and as always, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Irrational Fears. I am your co-host, Anthony Luciano, and we're going to jump right into round 14 of Nosleep Team's winners. I found my dead grandfather's diary in the cellar, and hopefully find out together what scares you. I never knew my grandparents that well. They died when I was 5. The house stayed in the family. For some reason, my parents decided never to sell it, and in time I came to know it better than I ever knew my grandpa or grandma. It was an old place, a century house, full of drafty corridors and hidden crawl spaces and stairwells that led to nowhere. We didn't go to the house often. I realize now that my dad only spent that time in the summers there to fix up the place. I suppose in his mind he thought he'd sell it one day, but that day never came. The thing that intrigued me the most about the old place was the cellar. Like some dark, faraway land, it was hidden beneath a trap door that took all my might to lift. Every time we visited the house in the summer, my parents told me to stay out of the cellar, but I never listened. I'd wait until they were in the backyard or fussing over something in the kitchen, and then sneak down there to gape at the oddities left by dead grandparents and not yet cleaned out. An old steamer trunk covered in stickers from various destinations around the world, dusty glass bottles full of odds and ends, a collection of pinned butterflies, ancient photos of days gone by. When I was 16, I sneaked down there one final time that last summer and found a hidden panel in the old roll-top desk I'd looked through so many times as a child. Behind it was a diary, ancient and crumbling, its leather jacket falling to pieces in my hands. I held it under the dusty beams of light pouring in through the lone cellar window like it was the word of God. Breathless, I opened it to the first page, one filled with scribbles and old handwriting faded from so many years. Could it have been my grandfather's? My entire being throbbed with excitement as I began to read and uncover the mysteries of what lay in the ancient book. December 12th, 1919. As far as I can tell, we've crossed the border into Estonia. Despite the frigid conditions, the CO will not let us slow the pace of our grueling trek. The pristine cursive my grandfather wrote in would say otherwise. Nobody wants to talk about it, but we are all scared. I joined the military with excitement. My father had always spoken of his contribution to the country fondly and had countless stories. He had a story for every lesson I ever learned growing up. And I thought, I want my own stories. Granted, I never imagined that there might be horror stories in that list. The words following were too faded to read. I began to skim the pages to see if there was anything else that was still legible. December 18, 1919. Our CO has finally come to his senses and is sending for aid. We can't fight this thing on our own. We never stood a chance. I had thought we were still in Estonia, but now I believe we never entered to begin with. We have just reached Lake Peipus at the border, and I fear we may not have the supplies to cross. As I lay here nearly frozen in the Russian wilderness, all I can do is try to ignore the noises. We had escaped it days ago, and out of fear for survival marched on for several days without paying much attention to anything else. I had expected to see horrible things when I served, but nothing like this. More faded penmanship. I kept on trying to get some more pieces of the puzzle. I wanted to know what my grandfather had been scared of. December 29, 1919. We've lost nearly half of our camp. I don't know where we are anymore. I'm scared, but I'm alive. Whatever that thing is, it has found us, and now I fear it is only a matter of time. December 31st, 1919. I saw it, but only for a second. It seemed to stand 7 feet tall. However, It was hard to tell as I was more than 30 paces away from it. At first I thought it was an animal as it was crouched down and eating something on the ground, but when it stood up, I saw that it was neither a beast nor a human. I started to walk towards it, but it was gone before I even closed in half the distance. The way it moved was what made me truly feel fear. It seemed to be running, but the feet never touched the ground. The arms came down past its knees, and with those long arms, it grasped onto 2 trees and it slung deep into the woods. I ran up to the figure that was now lying on the ground, only to realize it was one of the soldiers back at the camp. He was trying to speak to me, but every sound he made was accompanied by gurgling from his mouth. When he managed to let out a weak cough, blood splattered all around my face, but it didn't seem like he was injured in any way. I told him to remain calm, and I would get the medic over as soon as possible, but in the middle of my sentence, he took his last breath and died in front of me. When the medic arrived, they closed his eyes and turned him over. I had to use all of my willpower to not throw up all over the corpse as I finally saw what the creature did to him. The spine was curved upwards out of his flesh, and his ribs were shattered all across his intestines. By the teeth marks, it seemed like he was bit a total of 4 times. With just 4 bites, that thing took down another one of us. I looked down at the blood-spotted page, and I braced myself before I turned to the next page of his diary. January 2nd, 1920. The new year has come and gone, and neither I nor the others bothered with any type of festivities. Why celebrate the new year when it could be our last? Today I went around and told everyone about the creature jumping into the woods. It fell mostly on deaf ears, but a couple of guys were willing to venture into the woods with me. I asked the CO, but he seemed to be far too distant to join or stop us. For now, I'll enjoy this small meal and prepare myself for what may come tomorrow at dawn. January 3rd, 1920. I woke up at dawn and met up with the 6 men that offered to go with me. After a simple nod, we started to walk into the forest. Thick breath clouds emerged from our mouths as we walked silently in a row, our steps muted by the thick layer of snow. We did not know where we were going or what exactly it was that we were after. Our main goal was just to collect as much information as we could and report back to our camp ASAP. We walked for hours without saying a single word, following the scarce signs that we were able to identify. A broken branch here, a patch of hair there, but no steps at all. The complete silence and the lack of life signs was truly beginning to get on my nerves. I recall the relief that I felt when, at some point, one of the men broke the thick silence to point out that we should be getting back. He said so while looking at the sky, and that's when relief turned into panic as we suddenly realized that the sun was setting. How could that even be possible? By my calculations, we should still have some 4 more hours of daylight. My heart froze in horror when I suddenly realized that it was no sunset, but a tremendous snowstorm coming right at us. "Over here!" said the same man. He ran out of our formation and towards an odd-shaped bump in the snow. We followed him and saw the entrance of what seemed to be a fairly large burrow dug on the face of the earth. We all hurried to get inside as all hell broke loose outside, with tremendous polar winds whipping the trees and flakes of snow tainting the landscape into a spectral white. I'm writing these words as my hands begin to freeze. We all know that our only chance of survival lies down there deeper under the ground, far, far from this mortal cold. And judging by the strange chorus of voices coming from down there, I guess we're not the only ones. January 4th, 1920. I am alone. It took not even 24 hours for all 6 of the men accompanying me to join the voices further down the burrow. While I've distanced myself from the entrance to avoid freezing to death, I know that going down too far will most certainly mean never coming back up. When we heard the voices upon entering this tunnel yesterday, one of us immediately went down to see if there was anyone there that could help. A half an hour later, he called for the rest of us to come down, but there was something about his voice. The cadence to it. The way he pronounced certain words. It was not right. I told them not to go, that it could still be dangerous, but 4 of them heard none of it. They went down and they themselves started calling for me and the last man with me to come down. Just like the first, their voices seemed off, as if speaking in a trance. The last man, Sturgis, went down an hour ago after fighting the cold with me for so long. His voice has joined the others. All 6 of them calling to me, telling me to hurry up and come down to the tunnel. Their voices are off, but there is an urgency to them. If it was so important, why haven't one of them come up to get me? What is down there that they are seeing? July 7th, 1923. I had the dream again. It's been over a year, but I still think about it daily. It is haunting me like one of those ghouls from the motion pictures the kids love so much. If they had been there with me, saw what I saw, heard what I heard, they wouldn't be so enthusiastic about monsters. Violence should be something we abhor, but now you can go to the cinema and pay 35 cents to watch an hour's worth of it. Times are certainly strange. I don't need a damned picture to show me horror. I see enough of it in my dreams. Sturgis, Burke, Mosley, Daggett, Pierce, Hertz, all of them calling at me from down the icy tunnel with voices that didn't belong to them, telling me to come down quick. It was urgent. They needed me. When that storm cleared, I had booked it back to the campsite, hungry and near frozen. As I left the tunnel, the voices of my comrades screamed for me madly to come back. Upon returning to the site, I found even less of us there. The men were shook up, saying they saw a few of those creatures moving among the trees, staring at them intently from above with eyes black as the night sky, as if waiting for someone to branch off. And then they told me the things were calling out to them. We had left that day, walked non-stop for miles, leaving behind most of our supplies in our desperation to leave. After half a day of moving, we came across farmlands, part of the settlement of Nikolskoye. Back then I had no idea where we were and didn't care. If there was food and warmth, I was grateful. That night, on a bedroll loaned to me by a farmer, the first of the nightmares began. The same nightmare that I had right before waking up on my cot this morning. Sturgis, Burke, Mosley, Daggett, Pierce, Hertz. All of them, no longer themselves, stretched out with arms like sloths, hanging on the ceiling, staring down at me as I sleep. All of them screaming at me to go back, find the tunnel, for they have something to show me there. Crawling around the ceiling like spiders, their black eyes never leaving mine. I could dismiss them as simple night terrors, but the way those creatures look at me during them makes me unsure. Perhaps I have unfinished business in Europe. Perhaps I need to see for myself just what was in that tunnel. After all, I am the one that got away. Once again, and as always, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Irrational Fears. I have been your co-host and narrator for Nosleep Team's Round 14 winner. I found my dead grandfather's diary in the cellar. You can find out more about the team captain and all of the team members down in the show notes below, as well as a link to read along with the story and get to know Sleep Teams if you want to learn more about it or possibly join around. As always, this episode is brought to you by Audible, where you can get a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/irrationalfears. They have over 180,000 different audiobooks at any time, and honestly, if you want to hear it, it's probably there. So you can check that out if you like. If you would like to provide us with a monthly contribution, we would be super grateful and super excited to see you over at patreon.com/irrationalfears, where we have a bunch of patron-only bonuses and things like that. As always, you can find out more about the Irrational Fears project and kind of get a first look into all of the exciting stuff we have coming up by going to our brand spanking new website, www.irrationalfearsproject.com. You can jump in there, see all of the episodes of that we've done, everything that Sailor and I have written, everything that we're going to have from our exclusive authors, Mikey Knudsen, Elias Witherow, JJ Kincaid, and Michael Marks, a.k.a. their Reddit usernames are Mikey Knudsen, Elias_Witherow, Vayner Cupid, and Dead and Spread. So if you recognize any of those names, we're going to have a bunch of exclusive and exciting stuff coming from them as well over on the website. And I will stop babbling into your ear now, and I will see you next time so that we can find out together what scares you.